And next, we are happy to welcome Elisa Simantke, Editorial Director of Investigate Europe, a cross-border team of journalists from more than 10 countries that holds those in power accountable. So how do you create a successful cross-border team? And what are the different factors that contribute to the stability of collaborative projects? Elisa will share with us some of experience stories, strategies, and methods which can help freelance journalists collaborate, share information, and cross-check across borders. And before we start, let's watch a video about this amazing team.
It all started with the Euro crisis. It was not only an economic catastrophe, it was also a big media failure.
Most of the newspapers and most of us were doing journalism without the contextual interpretation, the explanation needed for the crisis itself. And we decided to create Investigate Europe.
Today we are in a globalized society. Big companies don't have borders. You need to have a collective response to that.
Many journalists work as lonely wolves. I think this is quite wrong. Much better is to work in teams and to overcome this competition issue, which basically is only the commercial logic of our employers. But it is not the logic of journalism to always compete against each other.
Cross-border journalism means that you exchange on eyesight. It's not parachuting journalism, go to another country, staying for 3 days, paying a fixer to do your story you already made up at your desk at home.
I've never researched topics so deeply.
Each time that we do a story, we almost write a book.
Better international journalism than I could have done by myself. It is not global, it is not local, it is both a local journalism.
We take the local, but we exchange it with the transnational, and then we come back to the local and it has another taste.
It's a new model. Of course, it's a kind of troublemaker because we spend hours on discussions.
An Investigate Europe meeting is like a box of chocolate and you never know what you get. It's really, how do we start? What is the first sentence of a story? We discuss it.
We discuss until we faint.
There's no external boss, there's no owners. It's just a team that makes it possible for us to do whatever we think is the most interesting and the most pressing matters to work on.
I believe in democracy. I believe in the right to uncover what is covered up by governments.
What is the environment? What is the structure that allows these things to happen? Who are these decisions made for? Because ultimately they should be for the people. Politicians, those in power serve. And if they're not, that's down to us to challenge that.
This project has always been an idealistic project, not a one driven by commercial interests. So we really want to be copied. That's our main goal.
My dream is that we get more together with the readers and that we have readers who actually help funding us via donations. That would help make us really independent and we could plan long term and be happy doing our work.
We need to keep our level of journalism always very high. We can't just become an ordinary group doing things that other newspapers can do. This is the challenge for the future, to remain an impossible group.
Support us.
Yes.
Welcome, Elisa. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you very much for having me today. I've not prepared slides because I wanted to be able to react in my 10 minutes also to what Tabea was sharing before me, because of course we all kind of coming from the same mindset and we're within the same community, and I'm very thankful on what Tabea has already shared as insights. And you could see, I mean, some of the buzzwords like parachuting journalism coming out of my mouth too. So I'm Elisa Simantke, I'm the editorial director of Investigate Europe. And we are around since 2016. So we are now this year celebrating our 5th year together, hopefully in person again, because also my team has not met each other in 1.5 years. Last time that we met in person was 2019 in Poland, in Gdansk, and I don't think I have to tell you what this means as a challenge for a team also like ours, that we are used in a way to work virtually together, because we are from the beginning just one more or less per country, at least only one reporter per country. And in the past, I always had to give presentations about how to collaborate when you don't meet each other. And it's been like a super exciting thing to talk about all our technical tools. Then COVID came along, and now that's probably the most boring part of the whole presentation, because this is how every newsroom nowadays has to work. But what I want to talk about a bit in these 10 minutes I have is what is defining maybe a successful cross-border collaboration. So in our case, I think the reason why we're still around after 5 years, and I mean, we don't have a business model in the classical sense. So we do our investigations all together, we share our results, and then everyone goes back home and publishes them with media partners. But even if we sell those investigations, that would never that would never finance the work of that many journalists working simultaneously, permanently on the ground in 10 countries. So we are mainly foundation funded, and we are a charitable organization, a cooperative, registered in Germany, but we are a European cooperative, which has, if one would go into details, the advantage that we are actually very European, and we could move our headquarters, and we are not German. That's something we really insist on, even if the person you see now in front of you is a German. We are really true cross-border international European team, and that's also why I always show this video, so you don't only see me as a talking head, but really had the chance to get to know our team. And I think the reason why we are still here is that we were able to really build trust over those 5 years. Trust among each other, trust with our sources, and trust with the foundations that give us money, which is also, of course, at the end an important part of the whole game, because we are paying our journalists that are permanently working with us. They are either getting a grant, or they are employed with Investigate Europe, or they're working as freelancers, but all of them get paid for the work they do for Investigate Europe. And I think part of the secret is that we already, many of us knew each other from reporting before. So we were born, as you heard it in the video, and so out of the Euro crisis. So many of us have been political reporters back then, and were shocked by the bias in our national reportings, and we were convinced after that it needs kind of a permanent team that works together, not only in sharing, for example, a big data set, as other very successful cross-border collaborations do, but really like already pitch stories to each other, discuss them from the very beginning, do the research together to really collectively challenge each other's biases. And this brought together a very committed group of journalists that is still together today, and that even had bridged some difficult funding periods. So I think this mutual trust and commitment has been one of the reasons why we were able to go on. And then also in the initial phase, we were approaching foundations that already knew us. So they were trusting the individual journalists of this new collective, because of course, if you're a completely newly founded organization or a group of journalists that also those foundations had never met before, maybe just a good idea isn't enough. So it was, I think, many little steps. And also we did not really start big from the beginning. I mean, it might sound big to have such a team, but we were back then only fundraising in 2016 for a journalistic experiment for half a year. And then we asked for a prolongation and so on, and then we prolonged, and by now we are in a multi-year funding period, because of course at a certain point you start also to need to plan long-term. But back then, of course, I mean, our first ideas were like, yeah, we want to permanently hire 10 journalists from countries, we need millions. But I mean, then you start fundraising and you meet the realities and you make it work to whatever extent then it's possible. So I think that's a bit of our secret. Then also all the discussions, the personal meetings you saw, so really like sleeping on each other's sofas, discussing in the kitchen, and now we've professionalized over the years. Now we have real meeting spaces. Everyone has their own rooms, and we're really have professionalized to a certain extent, because of course it also has become our main job for many of us. But still, the spirit is kind of our glue, that we are more than just colleagues. No, we really are on a mission in journalism together. But what I say, what's transferable to how you work as a freelancer, when you're looking for, I'd say, more ad hoc cross-border collaborations, I would say really like who you're working with is very defining. So when you're looking for partners, you should look out for people who you either know from before, who are recommended to you, or I think recommendations can also be platforms like Tabeas or previous work, or people that give a reference, but just try to make some kind of connection if possible. Otherwise, of course, you have to build on the work that someone has done, and maybe on the way he or she is telling his or her stories. So I think you have to find a way to connect to the person you want to work with. You should have some kind of a shared language. So it's either that you have actually the same language, or you're speaking English to a certain extent that allows you to share information without big mistakes, I would say, and without taking too much time from your actual work, because then it becomes very, very difficult to exchange if there's no overlap in any of your languages, or at least a basic understanding of English. Then I think it's very much about availabilities. So you should check, of course, I mean, if you try to have successful collaborations, one tend to look for the big names, the big papers, who are freelancers where, or even staffers. But at the end, the people have to find the time to actually work with you. And it's good if you have the same level of time available, so that there's not growing frustration because one works 100% and the other one just chips in from time to time, or you're really transparent about that from the beginning. So I think honesty, as also Tabea has put it here, is in this case really, really very crucial. Then I would say, because there were also some questions about financing. Of course, I wouldn't say it's absolutely needed for each and every of those collaborations, especially if you start on a smaller level. You can start with an exchange, you can start, each one is working on his or her project, and you're publishing with your media partners, and that might still be financed to a level that allows you this exchange without too big hurdles. But if you should go for one of those bigger funding opportunities, as I think will also be presented here today, I think one suggestion I have also from participating in many of those grant applications, sometimes successful, sometimes also not successful, I'd say take, especially if it's the first time, take a really concrete topic out of your expertise, and don't be too large. Maybe think of 2 or 3 countries and really think of that win-win situation and why this is so crucial for this story to become really like a bigger thing. And then if you ask for these grants and you write these applications, dare to ask for money to meet. Because I mean, if COVID allows, we are still in a special time for journalism. But I think building trust among each other is well, it's just much easier if you are able to meet someone face to face and discuss things, and then also, I mean, go for a coffee or a beer afterwards and really get to know each other on a level that computers and email exchanges just do not allow. And then I would say for the actual collaboration, let's say either hooray, you find a way of working together, you found your partners, maybe even some funding. I think to be a successful ad hoc collaborations, I'm even given seminars only about that, and I'm talking about an hour. So Paulina and Tabea already know them very well because you witnessed them, but I'm now trying to really reduce it for just those 3 minutes that I have left. I think one of my major beliefs here is that you should think big for your application with the foundations or your pitch to the media partners, but among your team, you should go for the minimum goals. Minimum goals means what do you absolutely need to be able at the end to publish a story? Because if you start discussing this and you go away from, okay, we want to bring all these bad guys, behind bars, and we'll expose a criminal network that would shake the world. I mean, that kind of promises. Then you think like, okay, but what do we actually need to print out the smallest story and with my media partner? Because when you start discussing this, you will immediately start discussing about priorities, and you will be probably surprised how different they can be. What different people see as absolutely necessary for a story to go out, and that will probably save you from misunderstandings, from having at the end a puzzle where everyone contributed what he or she thinks is most important, and then at the end it doesn't fit together. And then I think you should be really honest, as I said before, about your availabilities. So how much time do you actually have to dedicate to that project? When will you be out of reach because you've got other things to do? And the more honest about that, the better. And then you should really locate, and that's an own topic, you should relocate a lot of resources for sharing context and sharing your actual findings, because sharing is really an art on its own. And we always tend to underestimate the time it takes to not only just translate your stuff, that's not all, but to share all the context to make the others really understand why your contribution is so important for the overall issue. And then dare to talk about all these things. Because if we journalists meet, we tend to discuss our topics indeed and so on, but we nearly never talk meta. No? So how's that collaboration going? Are we about to achieve what we wanted to do? How's everyone feeling in their role? Are there any frustrations? Because I think you need to talk about this stuff so it doesn't really build up. And at the end, you have these people, in nearly all collaborations, you have people disappearing and no one knows why. And then there are some strange dynamics you can just avoid in trying to talk regularly about your group performance. So that's it. I think it really in a nutshell from what I can share in such a short time here. And I hope this was helpful. And maybe there are a few more questions I can answer.
Hi, Elisa. Nice to meet you. Yes, you have some questions in the live chat. Let's start for Tomás Caugeiro. Tomás asked, the business side of journalism is a challenge. How feasible would be the work without much of the funding from the EU grants and foundations? And how to do it in places without access to this kind of support?
Well, that's a very difficult question. So we do not receive any state funding or EU funding, so we are only working with foundations, and we are also very lucky because all of the foundations we are working with do core funding, so they also support us like more or less whatever we do. Some of them are more project related than others, but this is like a general thing. And of course, it gets more complicated if you have to go into issue funding, because there you always have this balance with also influence on your work. So that's always a delicate balance to strike. And of course, also for the journalism stories applications, you have a huge competition, and you never know if it goes through or not. So I think it makes much sense to start on a voluntary exchange, as Tabea has put it, of ideas and contributions to see where's the win-win so big that you can maybe share resources, share knowledge, and enrich each other's reportings, maybe without, you know, the big travel money and budget from the very start. So that's my recommendation, I think. Yeah.
We have time for one more question. It comes from Katarina. What are the biggest mistakes to avoid when founding a collaborative cross-border team?
I think you need to be very clear from the beginning what you want from this collaboration. It's what also Tabea has put, because I think we have no lack of idealism in our journalism sphere. No, we all want to do the best stories possible, but we have often very different ideas, cultural backgrounds whatsoever on how to do them. And you really have to find common ground here, so that you're speaking the same language in a more metaphoric sense when you're working together, because otherwise you'll be really lost in translation here. So I think that's find people that you feel comfortable working with, and of course that have a certain journalistic record for you to build on.
Thank you so much, Elisa. Thank you so much for being here and for answering the questions in the chat.
Yes, and if there are any more, please feel free to contact us. I mean, we are not an open team in the sense of that people can join us easily, but we're super happy for transferring knowledge, for helping you with whatever question you might have.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that amazing experience of Investigative Europe. I am sure that is very inspiring for the rest of the community, because you highlighted the challenges, but also the opportunities. It is a process. It is not easy, but it is possible. So I think this is the main challenges, the main message that we want to share with you.
Labdien. Buenos dias. Buenos dias.
Hi. Hello.
This is the European Journalism Center.
Since 1992,
we've been helping journalists all over Europe.
Now we ask for your support.
Join the European Journalism Collective.
And with a small donation, you can help us remain independent and sustainable.
So we can continue supporting journalists just like you.
And do even more.
And do even more. And do even more.